This is the fourth recording. This is the War on Terror and Other Policies of the Early 2000s, Chapter 11, Section 2, on these questions. The War on Terror and Other Policies of the Early 2000s. First question, why was the 2000 election controversial and historic? So it's down here. The historic 2000 presidential election. In the presidential election of 2000, Texas Governor George W. Bush, the son of the Bush we just read about, ran as the Republican candidate against the Democratic candidate, Vice President Al Gore. In one of the closest presidential races in history, Florida emerged as the key state because its electoral votes could decide the winner. The popular vote in Florida was so close that a recount of ballots was ordered by law. The election ended when the Supreme Court ruled to discontinue the recounts in the case of Bush v. Gore, 2000. Okay? Sorry. Although Gore won the popular vote, Bush won the electoral vote. The election marked the first time the Supreme Court intervened in the presidential election. The presidential election in 2000 was also the final election since the Hayes-Tilden election in 1876, in which the winner of the popular vote, Tilden in 1876, and Gore in 2000, did not win the electoral vote. There we go. The second question, it says, what were some of the ways President Bush responded to the September 11 attacks? Right here, I was actually in the same grade you guys are in right now when this happened. I was in a computer class when 9/11 happened. It was crazy. Anyways, and it's a week before my birthday, before I turned 16. My mother actually came into my house that day crying, pleading to me to go to Canada because she was worried that like another World War II was going to happen. Anyways, September 11, 2001, and resulting events. On September 11, 2001, the United States suffered the worst attack on American soil in the United States history. Al-Qaeda, a terrorist organization led by Osama bin Laden, caused the deaths of almost 3,000 people, primarily American citizens. Two passenger planes were hijacked and flown into the high-rise buildings known as the World Trade Center in New York City. At the same time, another plane flew into the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. A fourth plane was unable to attack its intended target as heroic passengers attempted to overtake the hijackers but crashed into the farmland in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, killing all aboard. President Bush focused largely on foreign policy after September 11, 2001 attacks. The president called the attacks acts of war and committed the country to a war on terror, a campaign against terrorists. American forces attacked military sites and terrorist training camps in Afghanistan. A major goal of the campaign was to aid and overthrow the Taliban rule and to and bring to justice the Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden. Bush urged Americans not to expect one battle, but a lengthy campaign unlike any other they have ever seen. Do we answer that question? Yes. We'll keep reading though, because there's more to that question. So right here, the passage of the USA Patriot Act of 2001 and the creation of the Department of Homeland Security reflected the determination of the United States government to prevent future terrorist attacks. The USA Patriot Act of 2001 gave sweeping new powers to government agencies, which in some cases limited the privacy of American citizens. The USA Patriot Act name was based on the phrase uniting and strengthening America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism. Some of the provisions of the act included increasing use of government surveillance against more crimes, using tracking methods by the FBI, increasing methods of investigation, facilitating information sharing between various government agencies, utilizing new technologies, prohibiting harboring of terrorists within the country, and enhancing penalties of crimes related to terrorism, which included crimes on mass transit and those of bioterrorists. Why? The next question, again, it says, why did the United States invade Afghanistan what were some of the challenges in Afghanistan? We already kind of mentioned that over here. We invaded them to attack terrorist training camps in Afghanistan, to overthrow the Taliban rule, to end and bring to justice the Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden. And the challenge, it was going to be a super lengthy war. It wasn't going to be short and quick. It went on for a long time. All right. Let's go to the next question. It is, why did the United States invade Iraq? And what were some of those challenges? So, war in Iraq, right here. In late 2002 and early 2003, the Bush administration warned Saddam Hussein to eliminate Iraq's weapons of mass destruction. Hussein claimed not to have any WMDs, weapons of mass destruction. The United Nations sent an inspection team which reported little success finding these weapons. The United States worked to gain United Nations support for an invasion of Iraq. Failing to gain this support, a small number of countries led by the United States and Great Britain attacked Iraq in March of 2003. This action strained foreign relations with France, Germany, and Russia. The campaign is known as Operation Iraqi Freedom. Why did we invade Iraq? In search for weapons of mass destruction. That is why we invaded Iraq. Some of the challenges, we weren't supported by the United Nations, and it created foreign strains between France, Germany, and Russia. Okay, so the next question, what were at least two of the domestic policies or issues during Bush's presidency? So that's on page 373. Domestic, are we talking about domestic policies? Yes, domestic policies and issues right here. So one of his domestic policies and issues, educational reform. January 8th, 2002, President Bush signed into a law a major educational reform bill called No Child Left Behind. The plan called for increased student and teacher accountability and targeted funds for improving schools. Critics said that it did not accomplish what it needed to do to improve American education. Now we have immigration issues. The Bush administration had to deal with several issues relating to immigration, some of which became more serious after the attacks of September 11, 2001. The Real ID Act of 2005 strengthened security requirements as U.S. borders and gave the Director of Homeland Security additional powers. Several proposals were introduced in both houses of Congress to increase border patrols and protection, restrict illegal immigration, and strengthen anti-terrorism laws. There was also extensive discussion over funding bills to construct a wall along the U.S. border between Mexico and the United States. This produced mixed reactions on both sides of the border. We have the Social Security. President Bush wanted to make Social Security reform a primary agenda item. The president's plan to allow younger workers to choose private accounts for a portion of their Social Security contribution drew praise as well as criticism. The president also tried to reform the Medicare program. A major concern with these programs is that the number of Americans eligible for them is growing. There is an increasing senior citizen population due to the aging of the baby boom generation. At the same time, there are fewer workers contributing to the system due to declining American birth rates of the 1970s and 80s. Some suggest the solution will be to raise the age of eligibility. Mass acts of violence, that's another, we're still seeing this one today also. In 2007, following several years of mass acts of violence in schools and college campuses, the most deadly shooting rampage in United States history at the time took place with 33 students, including the killer, dead in Virginia Tech and the Blacksburg, Virginia, later in 2017. A sniper in Omaha, Nebraska shopping mall killed 8 people, while in February 2008, another gunman killed 5 students, as well as himself in northern Illinois. All right, so those are several examples of domestic issues that were faced by Bush. And now we're going to move on to what were at least 2 of domestic issues faced by President Obama. So we have domestic issues. We have the economy. All right. President Obama took off the United States, faced the most serious economic crisis since the Great Depression in the 1930s. That was a major issue. We had the Great Recession. All right. Fair pay. The first act that President Obama signed into law was the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act of 2009. This law was the result of an original suit filed by Lilly Ledbetter over pay discrimination in 1998. In 2007, after years of disputes in the courts, the Supreme Court ruled in a 5-4 decision that too much time had passed between the discrimination and filing of the suit. An attempt in act to correct the situation in the future was defeated by a Republican majority in 2007. After President Obama's election in 2008, Congress quickly passed a new 2009 version of the Fair Pay Act named for Ms. Ledbetter and ending the issues of timing for filing pay discrimination suit. Another domestic issue by Obama we have is the health care. In March 2010, President Obama made history by signing the health care reform bill. Health care reform had been a major goal of the president and the Democratic Party. The bill passed with a narrow margin over fierce Republican opposition. The law was phased in over several years and has provisions to forbid insurance companies to deny health care coverage to applicants to extend the coverage to young adults, to the age of 26 and living at home when they're living at home, and eventually require all Americans to obtain health care insurance. Those are two things right there. Then we have one more. What are at least two foreign issues faced by Obama? So we're going to move on to foreign issues. Foreign issues. Foreign issues right here on page 376 and 377. So the first one is war in Iraq and Afghanistan. President Obama announced plans to draw down or to withdraw troops from Iraq. By October 2011, the U.S. troop strength in Iraq decreased to less than 39,000. The war in Iraq was declared officially over in December 2011. Simultaneously, the number of American troops in Afghanistan increased to around 100,000. This was the first time that U.S. troop strength in Afghanistan exceeded that in Iraq. The war in Afghanistan was drawing increased American attention as the once defeated Taliban continue their battle to regain power. Through the spring of 2019, American losses have continued in Afghanistan. Sorry, guys. Another foreign issue with Obama is the Arab Spring. The spring of 2011 was termed the Arab Spring due to the political uprisings against established and often dictatorial governments in Egypt. Yemen, Bahrain, Libya, Syria, and elsewhere. As part of the NATO mission, the United States participated in attacks on Libya to assist rebels in removing longtime dictator Muammar Gaddafi. In October 2012, a terrorist attack occurred against the United States mission in Benghazi, Libya, which killed the United States ambassador and 3 other Americans. The surprise attack caused a series of congressional investigations concerning the issue of how well the United States could defend itself in dangerous foreign locations. Syria, the Syrian civil war has drawn international attention due to the loss of thousands of lives, including thousands of civilians, women, and children. Some sources estimate that almost 11 million refugees. Some sources estimate that there have been over 450,000 deaths in Syria. There are also estimated to be almost 11 million refugees who have fled the fighting in North Africa and also in European nations. President Obama pledged the United States to accept some refugees. The admission of Syrian refugees to Americans. I lost myself, guys. I'm sorry. The administration of Syrian refugees. Wow. President Obama pledged the United States to accept some refugees. The admission of Syrian refugees to the United States has become a controversial topic due to the concern of many Americans that terrorists may use this opportunity to enter the United States. The Syrian government has been accused by some nations of using chemical warfare against its own citizens. And another foreign issue with Obama is ISIS. At the same time, the United States' involvement in Iraq was ending and the Syrian civil war was escalating, a new extremely violent terrorist group, ISIS, was becoming active in the Middle East. ISIS is a group claiming to be the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. Also, ISIL, Islamic State of Iraq and Levant. The geographic